And at the time, I didn't really know what to do with these people because I was so focused on working with athletes that our practice went from seeing some of the healthiest people in our community, injured healthy people, to some of
Mhm.
the sickest, chronically ill patients. And it's one thing that if you can't help somebody, it's another thing if you can't refer them to somebody who can help them. That's really a gutting experience as a practitioner because people are coming to you and you don't know what to do for them and you don't know where to send them.
My guest today is Sachin Patel. He's a former chiropractor who pivoted and started focusing on functional medicine. He's an extremely grounded individual who always brings great ideas to the conversation. In this episode, we discuss why he walked away from $60,000 that was owed to him to start his new business with no lease, minimum overhead, and a massive mission. We also dive into his philosophy of the doctor of the future is the patient and how health isn't found in a bottle, but rather in your daily routine. Sachin Patel is a father, husband, philanthropist, functional medicine practice success coach, international speaker, and best-selling author. Sachin founded the Living Proof Institute as part of his own personal transformation, and now he coaches practitioners all over the world on how to step into their power and save their communities. Let's get into it. Sachin, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Matt, it's an absolute honor. I'm so thrilled to be here and excited for our time together.
Yeah, we're a community of entrepreneurs helping other entrepreneurs. And I think your expertise in health and wellness will be very valuable to the group. But before we get into that, let's go back to some of the early days. You have a background as a chiropractor. What got you into that field?
Well, it wasn't always going to be the case. Some of the highest grades I ever got were in math and physics, and specifically in computer sciences. So I loved logic, I loved predictability, and I loved that I could make easy changes and measure the effects of them. But then I realized I'd be probably staring at a computer screen my whole life, and that turned me off. And I really wanted to engage and interact with humans. So natural health was something that was, kind of on my mind. And one of the things the degree that I got in undergraduate studies was in kinesiology, which is the physics and study of human movement. So it kind of combined my interest in human health and human biology, but also physics and movement and math. And then it came time for me to choose what I wanted to do after school or after undergraduate studies. And I was debating between dentistry and chiropractic. The philosophy of traditional medicine didn't really appeal to me because I like to be holistic and more on the natural side of things. And nothing wrong with the treatments that doctors provide. It just wasn't my jam. And I was really good with my hands. In fact, in high school, I won the high school shop award. So dentistry appealed to me because it kind of combined my passion of people and also working with my hands. But then I started getting dental brochures to schools, and it was just pictures of people's mouths. And I'm like, okay, I want to help the whole person. And what I realize now is dentistry has the capacity to do that. However, that leaned me into chiropractic. And specifically, as a chiropractor, I started working with athletes, elite athletes, weekend warriors, and everyone in between. And that's where my career in chiropractic actually started until, things shifted for me.
So it's interesting. We just had Dr. Gary Sanchez on the podcast with the Y.OS, and he was talking about being a dentist and how he kind of went that way. It's also interesting to me that you have a background in computer science, which is dealing with things, and then you pivoted and wanted to go to working with people. But even the thought of teeth is more working with things than with people. So that's very interesting. So you started your own practice as a chiropractor, is that right? You hung your shingle out and started working in your own shop, or were you working for somebody else?
Well, I started off as an associate. So I did an externship in my 10th trimester of school. I did an associateship at a practice called Norwood Chiropractic in Cincinnati, Ohio. And then I was hired right out of school to go work there. And it was an amazing run. I really enjoyed being there. My second year of being in practice, I hit my stride, and that landed the practice on the news in a good way. And my boss at the time had frozen on live television prior to that. So she passed the baton on to me. And they did a story about chronic tendonitis, specifically elbow pain. And so we brought in a lady named Connie, ran her story. And then we had a flood of new patients that called our office. And none of them, except one lady, had elbow pain. The rest of them had chronic debilitating health issues, autoimmune conditions, chronic pain, uh, Lyme disease. And at the time, I didn't really know what to do with these people because I was so focused on working with athletes that our practice went from seeing some of the healthiest people in our community, injured healthy people, to some of
Hmm.
the sickest, chronically uh, ill patients. And, it's one thing that if you can't help somebody, it's another thing if you can't refer them to somebody who can help them. That's really a gutting experience as a practitioner because people are coming to you and you don't know what to do for them and you don't know where to send them. So around that same time, I learned about functional medicine and doubled down on that because I realized that there was a huge need and an opportunity to be of service to people, and it leaned into my philosophy of that aligned with my chiropractic degree, which is getting to the root cause. I was so used to getting to the root cause of people's physical ailments that philosophy of getting to the root cause of their chronic illness was very aligned with my philosophy, and there are natural ways for us to do that. So it became the perfect kind of secondary training, postgraduate training that I went through. And then since then I've can't believe it now, but I've been in practice for 20 years. I've helped thousands and thousands of people, and I've also coached hundreds of practitioners to help them build success in their practices. And so I've it's the irony in all of this, Matt, is I now spend most of my time in front of a computer because I work with people virtually. So all my work is done virtually. I help people all over the world. And in between, I get to travel and speak on some pretty cool stages and make people's lives better. So it's been quite the run. And I'm so excited to be where I'm at, but also continue to help people improve their health in a meaningful and powerful way.
Yeah, that's great. We'll get to some of that in just a few minutes. I want to unpack the word functional medicine because I know it was relatively new to me. It's probably becoming more and more common nowadays with social media and all the posts out there. But can you explain what functional medicine is to somebody who may have never heard of it?
Sure. I'll explain what it is to me. And one of the things that I want to be maybe mindful of is that what I do maybe goes beyond the scope of what traditional functional medicine is. Functional medicine is personalized, root cause, and partnership driven healthcare. So we partner with the client to find the root cause and then create a personalized solution with them and for them, which means that each client, regardless of their diagnosis, may have a unique treatment intervention, and then so their individuality is honored, and we can do labs to look at their genetics. We can look at their gut microbiome, which is the milieu of bacteria in their gut that make up the majority of the DNA in the human body. We can look at their hormones. We can look at their nutrient status. We can look at a variety of different you know look at their health from a variety of different vantage points aside from just traditional blood work, and come up with a holistic solution for them that's individualized for them. And more importantly, it's something that they partner with the clinician on, so they're part of the intervention, not just a bystander taking a medication, for example.
Okay, that makes sense. So you're a chiropractor and you're starting to think about this functional medicine. Was there a fork in the road where you said, I can't be a chiropractor anymore. I need to start going down this other path? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, great question. So for me, I was working as an associate and I was being groomed to take over the practice. But when I started practicing functional medicine, the practice that I was working was mainly a soft tissue practice. So soft tissues are muscles, joints, ligaments, tendons. The issues that chronic runners have and athletes have are usually, not to say they don't have cellular issues, but most of them are coming into us for their physical ailments and issues. And so when I learned functional medicine, I realized that that's really where my passion was, is helping people beyond just their physical ailments. And I wanted to help the sickest of the sick, not just people who are healthy that have injured themselves. And again, nothing wrong with that, but my passion kind of shifted. So when it came time for me to take over the practice, I decided to go in a different direction. I ended up getting another associateship at a clinic that was opening up offices inside gyms. And so I love exercising and working out. I love working with people who are active. And they allowed me kind of the flexibility to also incorporate functional medicine. into my treatment protocols. And then ran into another fork in the road when they stopped paying me. So I was actually running two of their most profitable clinics, but because they were growing so fast, they were using all the revenue that I was generating to actually pay everyone else. And then I would get these IOUs at the end. So I had to walk away from $60,000 of money that they owed me, which felt like everything, and was everything for me at that time because my
Mm.
son was born. I just bought a new house. And after my son was born, or during his delivery, my wife had some complications due to a medical error. And that resulted in me promising her that she wouldn't have to work again, just so she could take care of herself and take care of my son and, be home to raise him. And on paper, that made sense. But when the company stops paying you, it doesn't quite work out. So I had to walk away from that. And that's when I started my practice, Living Proof Institute in Cincinnati, Ohio. And then, with God's will, we expanded to Toronto. My wife and I moved back to Toronto. And then again, with God's will, we started getting attention from our colleagues, and they wanted me to coach them in what we were doing. How were we building our business and our practice, and also on the clinical side of developing our successful outcomes that we're getting with our clients. So that led into me getting more into the coaching and business mentorship side of things as well.
So let's back up just a smidge and go back to you started your own business. You saw what it was at this other place. You saw what it could be. You saw the revenue that it was bringing in. What were the things going through your mind as you first started the business? Some of our listeners are going to be brand new entrepreneurs who have an idea, but maybe they haven't conceptualized it. They don't know how to turn this product into something more valuable. So where were you? What were you thinking? Your wife's got a new baby. You have a new baby, not just your wife. Both of you do. So how did that conversation go internally?
Yeah, it was a very difficult time for us financially because all of our savings went into the down payment of our house. And my wife, I guess, was at the time a pharmacist. She's now retired her license, but she was a pharmacist. So she had a six-figure income. I had a six-figure income. So we put our money into the house. And then when she stopped working because of her medical leave, everything was falling on me, and which was fine. But around that same time, shortly afterwards, my parents lost their business. So they ended up moving in to my house. So there is like now five mouths for me to feed. And I'm the
Wow.
only, income earner, but I'm not actually receiving the money that I'm generating. So your mind goes into weird and crazy places when you're in a situation like that because you've got to keep a smile on your face and you've got to, can't let your parents see you like this. You can't let your kid see you like this. You can't let your wife see you like this. So there's a lot of pressure that falls on you just to keep your face and head up. And so one of the things I realized is that when I walked away from that company was I needed to get out of a scarcity mindset. And so I was fortunate enough that I had enough equity in my house. And I asked myself a really simple question, which is, what do I need to survive? If I just cut out all extraneous expenses and all, kind of luxury expenses for the time being, and I focus on eating healthy and focus on paying my mortgage, what do I need to do? If I can put my head down for 90 days, what's the minimum amount I need to earn so I can pay my bills? So I took out a line of credit. And that line of credit was what I used to pay my mortgage and what I used to pay my monthly expenses. And it took me out of doing it for the money. Sometimes when we're trapped in a situation where we have to earn that next dollar to put food in our mouths or on the table, then we operate out of a different frequency, right? We're coming from a scarcity frequency versus an abundance frequency. And so I wanted to be in a position where I wasn't thinking about money all the time. I was more focused on creating something that was meaningful. And thankfully, I had a really good reputation. I think I would like to think I still do. And because of that, a lot of my clients followed me. So they followed me to my new practice, which I developed essentially right across the street. It just worked out that way. What was really fascinating, Matt, is and some of the challenges that come up is when you're trying to open up a clinic, you have to find a physical space. And so the idea of, leasing a space, building it out, it taking, several months to do that and going through all the design work, and then you're leasing out for anywhere from 5 to 10 years, that felt
Mm.
really heavy on me. And I don't know how other entrepreneurs feel about this, but I don't like to feel trapped. So that felt very trapping to me. And so one of the things that happened was one of my secretary at the time, her mother was showing real estate properties, and she said, "You know what, Sachin, you really got to check out this property." And it turns out that there was a military contractor that built out this beautiful building and this beautiful top floor of the office. And when they moved, they ended up selling that location. And then there was an individual, it was called Intelligent Office. They started subleasing the offices within the main office. So it was kind of like a Regis or maybe like a WeWork, an early version of WeWork, where
Mm-hmm.
you get an office within the main office and then you share some of the resources. So it was absolutely perfect because for $1,000 a month, I had a secretary that would answer all my phone calls and transfer them to me. I had my internet, I had printing services, I had a beautiful teaching kitchen, I had a 100-inch TV screen. I've never seen a TV screen that big where I could host meetings and conferences. So it was like the absolute most perfect scenario. And I had 60-day terms. So if I wanted to leave,
Wow.
I just give them a 60 days notice and they'd find somebody else and plug them in because there was a demand for a service like this. So it was like the absolute most perfect scenario. And when clients would walk into my office, they would think I owned the whole place because when the secretary answers the phone or when the client says they're here to see you, they don't get that feeling that there's a dozen other businesses in here. The
Mm-hmm.
the role of that front desk person is to make them feel like this is your business. And so it was pretty cool to have a situation like that. So I kind of invented a new category for healthcare practitioners to work out of a micro office because that's all I needed. All I needed was to be able to consult somebody from my space. And I had a 300 square foot office, so enough room for my chiropractic table and a huge desk, and all my furniture was included. So I didn't have to buy any furniture. It was just like the most perfect setup. And that's all we needed. And then because I didn't have my own staff member answering my phone calls, it required me to really make sure my clients were pre educated. So if they were calling, they were only calling for directions, not calling about what do you do, how do you do it, what do you charge. So we had to really pre-educate our clients using our website and using our online messaging to make sure that, when somebody would schedule an appointment, they're able to do it online. They were very educated and pre-informed, and they were just coming for their appointment, not calling to ask for information from the front desk. So it kind of forced us to do things a little bit differently and educate our clients and be very transparent with our process as well. So that's kind of where it started. And then, that micro practice model is what actually piqued the interest of a lot of my colleagues
Can,
because
can I
sure.
pause you there for just a second? I want to go back to this is all amazing, and we're going to get there. I want to, especially with the education part, this is exactly in line with, I think, the pattern I've seen with most entrepreneurs. Talk more a little bit about the scarcity mindset. And I've heard recently the idea of notice what you're noticing. So you had a scarcity mindset, and then you said, I don't want to be in a long-term lease. So how did you overcome that scarcity mindset? How did you recognize that? Was there some training or a book or something that you read that said, I'm feeling scarce, I have this small mindset, and you made it bigger?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, it was not my mindset; it was my reality.
Oh.
So I feel like I've always had an abundance mindset, and in Sanskrit the word is shraddha, and always having faith that
Hmm.
if we do good work with the right intention, then only good can come of it. And in hindsight, like this was the best thing that ever happened to me. But my reality was that the bank doesn't. You can't pay the bank with your mindset, right? You've got to pay the bank and your mortgage with actual dollars. So you have to actually have them in order to be in that state. Um, and so for me, it was my reality. And I believed in myself. So I knew that if I could put my head down and not have to think about money as the primary reason that I'm doing this, but put my head down and develop my programs and my practice and my mission from the place of let me think about the consumer instead of my bank account as to why I'm doing this, then I can put the right intention into the work that I'm doing. In terms of like where does that abundance mindset come from? I think there's lots of great books out there that I've read. One of the first books I read was called Crush It by Gary Vaynerchuk. And that was my
Uh-huh.
first audiobook I ever read or listened to, rather. And I still remember listening to, a friend recommended it to me. And that's where I started my first website. That's where I started really putting my message out there on social media. So I feel that really helped me in creating an audience. So when I moved locations, I already had a following. I already had people that were interested in working with me. Didn't matter where they saw me, right? Because there was a lot of new people that had never seen me, but eventually would see me later on down the road. One of my biggest, most favorite books is called the Bhagavad Gita. Gita translates to the Song of God. And so it's a conversation between Krishna, who represents God, and Arjun, who represents man. And that conversation between the two is really packed with life lessons. And, one of the life lessons is having unconditional faith and, putting the right intention into the work that you do and detachment from fruit. So, many times as
Wow.
entrepreneurs, we're so attached to the fruit of our labor, which is one way to measure success. But in the Gita, what they teach you is do your dharma, which is do the work you were here to do, and realize that the fruit is only one way to measure your success, right? And so detaching ourselves from that fruit was a very important lesson for me. And it's hard to do. I'm not saying it's easy because we
Right.
want to know that, what we're doing is impacting lives and making a difference. However, we have to have a way of measuring it, right? That is tangible for us. So I feel for me, having that faith was very important, and just knowing that everything would work out in the end. I mean, there was a statement that my dad made to me when I was very young. As a teenager, my first business was having a barber shop. So I had a barber shop that I ran out of my parents' garage.
Wow.
And one day my mom came home and saw me just having the time of my life, cutting people's hair and just having a great time. And and there was a lineup. Literally, people would drive half an hour to come and get a haircut from me. And and so she cried herself to sleep that night. And she was so upset because she saw how happy I was, and she was certain that I would become a barber, which in Hindu culture is like one of the lowest jobs that you could ever get.
Mm.
And I loved cutting people's hair because they'll tell you things that they would never tell anyone else, right? Because they trust you with how they look,
Yeah.
which means trust you with their secrets. And in half an hour, you could have somebody who is kind of, not feeling their best to feeling like $1 million, right? With a fresh haircut.
Wow.
I mean,
Yeah.
so many things happened in that short period of time. My dad told me that story at the end of the next morning. He woke me up and, as you normally would. And he was just telling me, he's like, your mom cried herself to sleep like that last night. I said, what did I do? What happened? And she's like, she thinks you're going to be a barber. And I'm like, no, dad, don't worry about it. I mean, I'm just doing this because, it's, I wouldn't say easy money, but it's good money, and I enjoy doing it. And it beats having to go somewhere else. If people come to you, it works out. And he's like, well, at least I never have to worry about you going hungry. So
Yes.
that statement that he made changed my life, because for me, that plays over and over in my head. That the absolute worst case scenario for me is I could always go back to cutting people's hair, which I love anyways, and which I was doing during COVID when shops were shut down. I would have like friends and family members come and get haircuts from me. And so because of that, it gave me faith in myself that I could take risks, and, hey, what's the worst thing that can happen? I end up doing something that I love, and people always need haircuts. That's never going away. And so that gave me confidence to, kind of bet on myself and realize that what's the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah. I keep seeing that change. Everything that you've said is you want to take people from here to here. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that's a worthwhile goal that we take our time, talent, and treasure and transform people in their lives. So that's really great. You mentioned that you were a chiropractor and you're teaching people kind of are treating people one on one. But then you also added this education component. And I think that's probably when your business started to hockey stick. Is that right? Because if you have one patient and one doctor, you're limited by time. Your constraint is time. But you were pre educating them before they even came into your office. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got a CD when I was leaving my chiropractic job. The associate that was replacing me said, "Hey, I heard you're into nutrition." And he handed me a CD from a gentleman, a doctor, a colleague of mine named Dr. James Chestnut. And in that CD, I've probably listened to it 1,000 times now, completely changed my life and perspective. What he said was that the world doesn't need more doctors, more nurses, more drugs, more supplements. What it needs is more healthy people. And what he realized as a chiropractor himself is that he could help people without ever laying a hand on them because he could change the way they think, he could change the way they act, he could change the way they move and inspire it intrinsically. Right? As chiropractors, what's interesting about chiropractic is that it's a very misunderstood profession
Hmm.
because most people think of chiropractic as a procedure. They think chiropractic is going to somebody, getting your spine or your joints manipulated, and then you leave, and that's the treatment. But chiropractic is actually a lifestyle. Chiropractic is based on how we eat, move, and think. And we have, domain over that for ourselves, right? I can choose how much I move each day. I can choose what I eat each day, and I can choose what I think each day. And that triad is what creates health. So what he realized is that he could never lay a hand on anyone again, and he could help them eat, move, and think better. And that would be a very evidence based way of helping people. And so I recognize that too, because working with elite athletes, it really wears down your hands. I remember my thumb, my thenar muscle, which is this muscle here, used to be 3 times the size that it is now because I would put so much force working on people's glutes and their calves and their hamstrings and these big muscle groups. And you'd have
Hmm.
like one of my clients was the world's strongest man, and I had like bodybuilders coming in to see me. So, you're working with people who just have enormous muscles. And my wife would have to massage my hands at the end of the day. And so my mom saw me one day and she could just see how much pain my hands were in. And she's like, "You really have to learn how to use your head instead of your hands." And that
Wow.
stuck with me too. So as a chiropractor, and as a doctor, really the word doctor means teacher. So it's our namesake to teach and educate. So what I realized is the only solution to our current healthcare crisis isn't more people seeing me, it's more people being their own doctor. So our mantra is that the doctor of the future is the patient. And so our vision became and mission became, how do we help people become their own doctor? How do we teach them how to take care of themselves using skills instead of pills so that we can alleviate this burden on the healthcare system, right? Because if nobody knows how to take care of themselves because they've never been taught how to, right, then the healthcare system is already imploding, but it's just going to implode faster as the population grows. But if people know how to take care of themselves, then not only are they living a better quality of life, but the trajectory of their life completely changes. Because imagine you knew how to be healthy as a child, right? And that was just your standard default way of living. Most people get into their 40s, 50s, and 60s and realize they've been doing it all wrong, which
Yeah.
means that they've modeled it all wrong to their children, which means their children are headed down the same path, right? So this cycle just keeps repeating itself. But if we could teach people how to take care of themselves, then guess what? Multiple generations can change, right? You could heal the next generation in this lifetime instead of kicking the can, which is what we do right now. We kick the can and hope the next generation fixes the problem. And so that became our vision and mission is how do we educate people so they can be their own best doctors? And then those that do come and see us, it's all education based. So I like to think of our services that we provide like driving school instead of going to the auto body shop. And so most chiropractic clinics are like going to the auto body shop. Hey, I'm banged up, like fix me up. Okay. You go through the ringer and then you walk out of there and you might feel like $1 million, or you might have to come back and keep going through the process. But if I teach you how to drive and I teach you how to prevent the accident, I teach you the rules of the road, I teach you the maintenance schedule and all of those things, because you've got to keep this car for your entire life, this vehicle for your entire life. I feel like that can create massive change and create autonomy when it comes to health. And, they say there's no money in healthy people. There's no money for pharma in healthy people, but I can assure you that healthy people are spending their money elsewhere. They're spending their money on things they actually want to buy instead of things they don't want to buy. So it just creates a shift in our economy. It doesn't cause the economy to spiral out of control.
Yeah, that's really great. I love this. It reminds me, as a paramedic, we had to take defensive driving and something called EVOC, Emergency Vehicle Operations course. And the whole idea is that you want to prevent the accident so you never get into it. And so you're, instead of looking here, you're looking 6 to 12 seconds ahead. You're making sure that you know where your lanes are. If the guy suddenly next to you has a tire blowout and comes in your lane, you're not sitting right here next to him. You
Mhm.
have some wiggle room. And so that's kind of the same line that you're doing. And I love that you said that big pharma doesn't make any money if people are healthy. And I remember as a paramedic one day thinking this very thing, that why don't we be proactive about helping people so that I don't try and undo 50 or 60 years of bad living in 25 minutes of CPR? It just can't be done. And people
Mhm.
would look at me like I was absolutely crazy. Or they'd say, yeah, that's a good idea. I just don't know how you do it. So you're doing it through education, it sounds like. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, the word doctor means teacher, right? So
Right.
it's literally our namesake. It doesn't mean prescriber. It doesn't mean pill pusher. It doesn't mean, somebody who cuts people open. It means teacher. So it is our obligation to our communities and our duty to our dharma, if you will, if we've taken this oath to educate people. And my mission became, how do I keep as many people out of my office as I possibly can? Some of my most amazing case studies are people that have never been to see me. These are people that have come to my presentations or they follow me online and they just do what I tell them to do. Because the same advice I would give my client who's sitting in front of me is the same advice I'd give to somebody who's paying me. So I just put the information out there freely because I believe everyone needs it and somebody needs to share it with them. And those that have more pressing needs or want to go deeper, then we're certainly here to help them and support them on that journey because there's obviously more layers to it, right? We can get into
Sure.
genetics, we can get into lab testing, we can get into, and just like you can go to driving school, um, you can also take a car off the lot. You can buy a brand new Porsche and you can take it to a tuner, right? So I like to
Yep.
think of myself like a driving school and a tuner to help you get the most that you can out of your health and your life.
One of my favorite analogies is a lighthouse. And I think of what you're doing is a lighthouse for health. And
Mm.
lighthouses serve as a warning. There's a rock here, there's danger here, but also as a beacon that if you're out there in the fog, you can see the light shining and you can start moving toward it. And what you said is so powerful. The best people that or the way I help people the most is they never see me or you never see them. They see
Mhm.
you, but you don't see, they don't have to come in to actually be helped. So, how are you doing this, creating education and leveraging this? Because it seems like you went one on one to having some sort of education platform. I'm assuming it's you're having classes, webinars, things like that. And then you mentioned earlier that you're training other practitioners.
Yep. So we actually developed a system, my wife and I. It's called Living Light. And there's no other program like it on the planet because what we do is we take a multifaceted approach to somebody's health and we teach them how to live. So it's a way of life. Just like chiropractic is a way of life, this Living Light program is a way of life. We teach people how to breathe. We teach them how to regulate their circadian rhythm. We teach them what material clothing to wear. We teach them what type of bed sheets to have. We teach them what products to use in their homes to, wash their clothes, to clean their countertops, to clean their bathrooms. We teach them, what wearables to use to track their metrics and their progress over time. We teach them how to sleep, right? Most people have issues and challenges with sleeping and how to move their body. So we give them the blueprint for health creation. And we license that system to practitioners because we get rapid results without excessive testing and without supplements. One of the things that I realized, Matt, is that people would come to us and they'd be willing to pay $1,000, $2,000 for lab tests to get to the root cause. And there's so many things that you can't test for. So I can't test for do you breathe through your mouth or your nose, but that completely changes your health. I can't test for do you love your job? That completely changes your health. I can't test for do you have a connection with a higher source or higher power? That changes your health. Do you spend time out in nature? Right? There's no lab test for that. Are you grounding? There's no lab test for that. What time do you go to bed? Do you chew your food? Right. So when you start asking these questions, you realize that the majority of people, even those that have spent thousands of dollars seeing other practitioners, are never doing the things that they need to be doing to take care of themselves. Nobody's taught them these things. And so we started teaching this to our clients. And what we realized is that, A, you can't test for everything. And so you're always missing something.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that with supplements, is that how many supplements are you going to give? Like a lot of people are taking supplements for lifestyle deficiencies, and it just doesn't work that way. So
Wow.
vitamin D is a good example, right? So a lot of people take vitamin D, and research is showing that it doesn't reduce all-cause mortality. So it doesn't do what people think it's going to do. When you're low in vitamin D, you're deficient in sunlight, which means you're deficient in nature. You're deficient in fresh air. You're deficient in connection with source. You're deficient with the essential oils that the trees are releasing to help boost our immune system. You're deficient in red and infrared and UV light, which do different things in the body. Chances are your circadian rhythm is also off. So giving somebody vitamin D is great for window dressing their lab work, but it's not actually fixing the problem. And so what we want to do is we want to understand what are the behaviors that actually create, change in people's health. And when you start stacking these things on top of each other, things that people are already doing, right? You're already breathing, let's breathe with awareness. You're already thinking, let's think with awareness. You're already pooping, let's poop in the correct anatomical position. Most people don't even poop in the right position. you know, you're already drinking water. Let's add a little bit of electrolytes or salt to it, right? So it hydrates your cells. So we're not asking people to do anything radical. We're asking them to do things with awareness, things that they're already doing. And sometimes you might add a few things. But when they start doing those things, the body just lights up. Just like a plant, if a plant needs water, okay, but you give it more sunlight, it's not going to grow, right? And you might think, oh, sunlight doesn't work, right? It needs sunlight, but what it actually needed was more water. That's what it was missing. When you give
Mm-hmm.
people the things they're missing, they just like a plant, they just perk right up. And instantaneously, because we have wearables, they're able to see the difference that takes place, measurable, quantifiable difference that takes place. They feel better, they lose weight, they're sleeping through the night again, they have way more energy than they did before. The body fat, especially on the midsection, starts melting away. They feel more calm, they feel more peaceful. So everything that they're aiming for improves in as little as 4 to 6 weeks. And it's amazing how quickly the body responds when you give it exactly what it needs.
I love this. This is amazing. If there's an entrepreneur out there who's stressed, because sometimes this job can feel like a roller coaster, what would be the top three things? You mentioned so many great ideas, but let's say that they're just stuck and sometimes taking the smallest step is the most important and sometimes the hardest. What would you tell them?
Yeah, great question. So, first and foremost, if you're going to take a step, step outside. So, being
Ah,
outside, particularly in nature, if you can find a patch of trees close to you, very, very valuable way to heal your nervous system. So, when we surround ourselves in nature, we actually are more likely to get into flow states. Steve Jobs knew this. That's why he would do all of his meetings, walking meetings outdoors in
mm-hmm.
nature. Because when we expose ourselves to self-similar repeating patterns, so if you think of a tree, right? It's a self-similar repeating pattern, right? Look at a forest, self-similar repeating pattern. You look at waves in the ocean, self-similar repeating pattern. These are referred to as fractals. The brain is a fractal unit, which means that it craves self-similar repeating patterns. Nothing in your home is a self-similar repeating pattern. In
Can
nature, there
can
are
you
no
unpack that
straight
a little more?
lines.
Because you're saying
Yep,
self-similar repeating pattern, but is that it's basically chaos or it's a network versus straight lines in our house?
exactly, right? So if you look in your house, most of the lines are straight.
Right.
There are no straight lines in nature. There are no straight lines in your body, right? So the math of your environment is completely dysfunctional for the math of your brain and how your entire body works. If you look at a self-similar repeating pattern would be like a tree. So if you look at the branch of a tree, and as the branches branch out, they look exactly the same. Okay? If you look at a bush, right, the pattern of the bush keeps repeating itself over and over again. So these are, if you look at a mountain, right, you look at a little rock and you zoom in enough, you can make it look like a mountain,
Yep.
right? So these are self-similar repeating patterns. So they are healing and get us into flow states and get us out of sympathetic dominance. This is why we always feel good when we're out in nature, right? It's almost impossible not to feel good. The other thing that happens when we're in nature is if you are outside, is I suggest people ground. By grounding, we're creating an electrical discharge. And so we're absorbing negative electrons from the earth. If you can't get your bare feet on the earth, just touch a tree. And so that balances our electrical system in our body, which feels amazing. Like I have one of my clients and he's a very busy entrepreneur. And one of the things we'd have him do is just touch his feet on the grass at the end of the day. And he would discharge all that stress. And he could literally feel the stress leaving his body before he walks into the house. The other
How
access
long,
point,
how long do you need to do that?
the
How long
longer
do
the
you need
better.
Okay.
Yeah, the longer the better. One thing I'll say is you can buy grounding sandals. You can go to earthrunners.com and buy grounding sandals. They have a little copper plug at the bottom of them and a special silver material that wraps around your foot. So you can get free electrons that way. You can touch a tree. You can sit on a rock and touch it as long as it's touching the earth. And then you can also get a grounding mat. So I have a grounding mat on my desk. So I get free electrons all day while I'm sitting here talking to you. And
Oh.
then the other thing that you can do is get grounding sheets for your bedroom or a grounding pillow for your head. So there's ways that you can get grounding, you stay grounded throughout your day, right? So even if you can't go outside, so I would suggest, start with 2 to 3 minutes, work your way up. Human beings are the only animal or species on the planet that does not directly connect with the earth each day. So we are designed not to wear rubber soles, right? So if I wanted to disconnect somebody electrically from the earth, I would have them wear rubber soles. Leather soles, on the other hand, allow for that electron exchange to take place. So if you ever look at, Native Indians, for example, right, they
Hmm.
would wear leather shoes, right? And high quality shoes, if you ever buy expensive shoes, they're leather from the sole up, right? It's the rubber sole that doesn't allow that electron exchange to take place. So you can buy special shoes, you can buy sandals, you can buy grounding mats. There's ways for us to create. If you can't get your feet in the earth, there's ways for us to discharge and create that exchange of electrons.
So you mentioned getting outside, getting some sunlight, touching trees. What about sleep?
Yeah, sleep is a big one. Particularly, I want to layer on top of that the direct access point to our nervous system is our breath.
Ah,
And one of the things that is paramount when we sleep is how we breathe when we sleep. Very few people talk about this. So, what I focus on with all of my clients is something as simple as mouth taping, which can have the most profound effect on somebody's health. Now, mouth taping is only necessary if you sleep with your mouth open, which is about 66% of people. You'll know you're sleeping with your mouth open if you wake up and your mouth is dry. You'll wake up and you might have drool on your pillow or on your cheek, or you wake up often to use the restroom at night. Breathing through your mouth is a diuretic, so it causes us to lose fluids and dehydrates us. So when we tape our mouth, which is just putting a piece of tape vertically like this, it relaxes our jaw, it puts our tongue in the correct position, and it also causes us to breathe in and out through our nose. When we breathe in and out through our nose, it creates a signal of safety to the nervous system. So now we're actually going to start dramatically improving our recovery. Some people wake up more tired in the morning than when they went to bed. And you have to wonder, okay, your sleep quality can't be that good if you're waking up more tired when you should be the most refreshed and most alert first thing in the morning. And what we discover when we probe a little bit deeper is it's their breathing quality that's impacting their sleep quality. So people spend all kinds of money trying to work on their sleep when it's actually how they're breathing while they're sleeping that's the problem. And when we fix that with a 5 cent piece of tape, less than that usually, they report back that within the first 2 to 3 days, they're already feeling like a whole different person. So
I
breathe,
have
yeah, the
to I
breath
have
is
to
so important.
admit I have to admit that the idea of mouth taping, every time I hear it as a paramedic, I start to cringe a little bit and like notice what I'm noticing. I feel panicky a little bit. And what you're talking about is just a basic piece of paper tape, right? And
Yep. And we
and
would place it vertically.
vertically,
So
not
you can
horizontally.
still, yeah, so you can still breathe through your mouth if you want to, and you
Okay.
can still talk if you want to. I know there's like tapes that go right across your mouth, and
Oh.
I don't necessarily encourage that. There's also a tape called myotape, which is a tape that goes around your mouth like this, And so it just keeps the purpose is just to keep your mouth closed, not to
Mhm.
keep it sealed. When you close your mouth with the tape, your jaws relax, your tongue is positioned in the right place. And then it's just allowing you to make sure your mouth doesn't fall open while you're breathing at night, and then you're breathing through your nose while you're sleeping.
Is there a way to practice this or get used to it if somebody does have fear or anxiety about doing this? Can you do it while you're sitting there, maybe not eating dinner, but watching TV or reading a book or something to get used
Yeah.
to it?
Yeah. So you can actually do a build up. So you could tape your mouth during the day for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, work your way up to a nap, and then you can tape at night. Another alternative, Matt, could be wearing a chin strap. So a chin strap just, kind of wraps around the top of your head and keeps your mouth closed that way. So people who are claustrophobic, I'm claustrophobic, truth be
Uh-huh.
told. So I don't like tight, small spaces. And I found that when I do mouth tape, I don't feel that claustrophobia. But I like taping vertically, and that's all you need to do. So the purpose isn't to seal your mouth; it's just to ensure your mouth stays closed. And for people who don't like that idea, you can get the myo tape, which goes around your mouth instead of having to fully seal it.
Is it something that over time you get used to and you don't need it anymore? Or do you basically, if you start mouth taping, you're going to be doing it for the rest of your life?
Um, so for me, because I know how powerful nasal breathing is to
Hmm.
your health, uh, I I I've only forgotten my mouth tape like 5 nights in the last 5 years.
Well,
And so even if I travel, if I forget my mouth tape, which is very rare, but if I do, I'll ask for a band-aid and I'll just like, put the band-aid on my mouth like this. Um, and I don't think I need it anymore, but I am not taking any chances. So it's such a very, very inexpensive intervention, and it has such a powerful effect on how I feel each morning that I don't want to take any risk or any chances that my mouth falls open while I'm sleeping. But
hmm.
not everyone needs it. So some like myself, I'm a habitual nasal breather. How we breathe during the day carries over into how we breathe at night. So I probably don't need it anymore, but I use it as an insurance policy.
That's great. As we start to wrap up, what haven't I asked you that I should have asked you? Or what else do you want to share with somebody about either about what you do or about health, wellness?
Oh, so many things. But I think of one thing I think that's important for people to know is that they're so much more powerful and capable than they think, or that they've been given permission to think they are. Health is something that we oftentimes don't realize how much uh, domain we have over our own health and how simple it actually is to be healthy. So being healthy isn't complicated, and I don't believe it necessarily has to be expensive. Once you learn what to do, once somebody teaches you, which is what we do, we kind of take people through their own personal, university, if you will, and we teach them about themselves through DNA and through, labs, but then also through lifestyle and wearables. They have a formula now. They have a blueprint to take care of themselves. I've in 21 years now and being in practice, I've only missed one day of work. And that was because I had the sniffles and I was working as a chiropractor. And I didn't want to be sniffling around people. And I went back to work the next day. So I know what people are capable of. My son, very rarely does he ever come down with anything. Um, and so, I know what's also, while his friends are like sick and missing school and stuff like that, he's only missed like a couple of days of school. Even through daycare, he's only missed a couple of days of school in his whole life. So I know what's possible when we're provided with the right environment and the right knowledge and the ability to take care of ourselves. One thing I want to make clear is that we don't focus on prevention, although it might sound like that. What we focus on is health creation. So just like if you were to put into your GPS, if you're going to a restaurant or you're going to meet a friend, you would put in exactly where you want to go. You wouldn't put in all the places you don't want to go, hoping you'd get to where you want to go. And so health is the same way, right? How many different diets are we going to have to prevent all the different diseases? How many different ways are we going to live to prevent the different diseases? And of course, what we focus on, we facilitate. So by having a focus on what we want, the way we want to be healthy and the way we want to live, that becomes our North Star. So health creation over disease prevention. I don't even like to introduce the words of disease and the different diagnoses that people can entertain That's what big pharma wants you to do. The more collective energy we create around a disease or a diagnosis, the more we co-create it. So for example, if you want more cancer, do more cancer runs. If you
Hmm.
want more heart disease, do more heart disease focused charities, right? Because the more we speak those words, the more we speak them into existence. So speak health into existence by focusing on a health creation strategy, which means you can start at any age. You don't have to wait until you're sick to learn how to eat or to be healthy. You can start at any age and enjoy the trajectory that your life will take you on, which many people, unfortunately, won't do. But if you're a smart entrepreneur, one of the things that you'll realize is that you can never be a 10 out of 10 dad, business owner, mom, spouse, whatever your role is. You can't be a 10 out of 10 in those areas if your health is at a 7 out of 10. So for most people, your health sets the foundation and the ceiling for where your life will take you.
You mentioned something before we started recording about the idea that when health is really done right, it completely affects not just you, but your family. Will you refresh? Will you go back to that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So our health is one of those things that it's not about teaching people what to do, it's about showing them what to do. So our children are watching us, right? Particularly between the age of 0 and 8, where we're creating the foundation of what it means to be alive and what it means to live. And so they're modeling our behaviors, not what we say, but what we do. And so by you creating a healthy environment in your home, this is what I love about the work that we do. When I change the lights in your home, your whole family benefits. When I change the cleaning products in your home, the whole family benefits. When I change the fabrics that your family wears, the whole family benefits, right? And so when I change the nutrition in your home, the whole family benefits. Not, at some point in the future, but today. So by teaching people how to be healthy and how to live healthy and how to bring health into their home, which is where it starts, every generation, that lives in that home benefits, and every future generation benefits as well. Our wealth is something we want to leave behind, of course, but what we really want to leave behind is a legacy of health, because when people aren't healthy, it could wipe out all the wealth. And you can't, here's the other thing, you can't buy healthy. You have to be healthy. You have to create healthy. It's not for sale. And if it was, nobody would be able to afford it.
I love the idea that when one person, if I start taking care of my health, then my wife and my daughter may see that and they also may start moving toward that. So it's like you step into the light, they see that, hey, this is working, this is okay. And pretty soon you start having a line of other people start coming in. So that's really great. I love that.
Thank you.
If there's a healthcare practitioner out there who said, hey, I listened to this podcast, I'm really interested in this, who is that person that should connect with you so that maybe they can be part of your family or your tribe or however you want to describe it?
Yeah, I think anyone who's looking to, plug in a solution into their practices that can take them from one to many, somebody
Hmm.
who's looking for a proven approach that's data driven, and somebody who is coachable and wants to apply something that's worked for thousands of our clients and hundreds of the practitioners that we've coached and plug it into their practice. We can get our system in their practice up and running within 30 days. So they don't have to spend all the years and time and energy that we did building a program from scratch. We've already built it out. It's world class. It's produced results over and over again. In fact, our programs all come with a money back guarantee, and I've never had to give anyone their money back so far, because we know it works and it has worked over and over again. So if practitioners want to plug that into their practice, then we can help them with that. And it could be a chiropractor, naturopath, medical doctor, health coach, nurse practitioner. We've worked with people across the board, even pharmacists can plug this into their practices as well.
There's
And it
no
could be,
geographic boundaries on it, right? So you're in Canada right now, but if they're in the US, if could it be worldwide?
yep. So it depends on their designation. So health coaches can work with people across borders. Medical doctors, some of them will use their medical degree in their state. Some of them will, act as a coach. So they wear two different hats when they do this, or they'll hire a coach for their practice to plug the system into. So yeah, it depends. Their scope of practice and their where they can practice and deliver this will depend on their designation. So I retired my chiropractic license and became something called an FDN, a functional diagnostic nutritionist, which allows me to order the labs, but also work with people across anywhere in the world.
Wow, that's really powerful. It's great. If
Thank
people
you.
want to learn more about you or your company, your business, how can they do that?
Yeah, certainly. So they can go to www.becomeproof.com. They can learn more about our institute. The Living Proof Institute is the name. They can also find me on Facebook at Sachin Patel DC or on Instagram at the Sachin Patel. And happy to connect with people there and introduce them to what we do and certainly share truth and information that can be life-changing for them.
Sachin, thank you so much for your time today. I think this has been really valuable, not just to our listeners, but to me personally and my family. So, on behalf of everybody out there, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
All right. Until next time, take care. Hey, real quick, we're building a community of entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs. These are people just like you who want to start or grow their businesses and are ready to take the next step. If that sounds like something you want to be a part of, sign up and join us today.